with France. Now, all of that was discussed in the first module. So, in module 1B, we're going to go into Bismarck's diplomatic, and also remember he's using both war and diplomacy in order to create the kind of atmosphere that will result into the unification of Germany. So right now, by looking at Mode 1A, we have seen the background. We've seen how Bismarck has created the necessary atmosphere, for Germany to be unified. He had created the impression that Prussia was a leading state by fighting, to preserve the independence of Schleswig and Holstein, and all the other Germanic states had seen Prussia as a leader, a nationalist leader, a leader that was interested in all Germans. It doesn't matter where the Germans were. So he had created the impression that all the other Germanic states can support Prussia in whatever ambitions that Prussia had. And also he had also created friendship. In spite of defeating Austria in 1866, he had also created friendship between Austria and Prussia. And most importantly, he had created friendship between Prussia and Russia, the huge Russian Empire. Now, all of these were very important precedents towards the unification of Germany. Now, in Module 1B, we're going to look at the Franco-Prussian War. Okay, the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871. Now, this was the final, both a diplomatic and strategic attempt, okay, by Bismarck to put together the Germanic states into one nation. Now, in all that we've studied in Module 1A, we discovered that Prussia had been positioned by Bismarck at this point in time to move the Germanic states into unity. But the only obstacle that was now remaining to stand in the unification of Germany was France. Now, in this instance, Bismarck was going to use a mixture of both war and diplomacy in order to enter into this final stage of the unification of Germany. That means he's not just going to use diplomacy, but he's going to have to fight France, because without defeating France, there's no way that France is going to allow Germany to be unified. Now, there are one or two background incidences that took place that helped lead, up to this particular incidents of the unification of Germany. So first of all, we need to look at one very, very important incident. And that incident was the problem of the ascension of the Spanish throne. Okay, this is Spain right here. We can see the proximity of Spain to France and Germany. Okay, now what happened in Spain was that the Spanish crown had abdicated the throne after certain issues had taken place in Spain, and she, at this point in time, Queen Isabella, could not sustain herself no longer on the throne. So after abdicating the throne in Spain, there was need for somebody to take up the Spanish throne. Now, remember, we established this fact previously in this course, that most of the royal families in Europe were normally related. They had intermarried at some point in time, and most of them, had relatives, in all the major Spanish thrones, the Russian monarch, the French monarch, the Bourbons in France, okay, and the Spanish throne, and those in England were all connected one way or the other, related, because they're often intermarrying. So the situation right now in Spain was for one of the closest relatives, that means the person that was in line for the throne, the heir to the Spanish throne, to be crowned as a king in Spain. So what happened was that the closest heir, that is to Queen Isabella, was actually a Prussian German. Okay, this was the person of Prince Leopold of Hohenzollern. Now, this was a problem for France because Prince Leopold becoming king, okay, becoming king in Spain made France a nation that would be encircled by Germanic power. So that means in Spain here, the king of Spain will be German, and also the Germanic states here are struggling to become unified. So that means France as a nation will now become, encircled by Germanic powers, so to speak. So France was not too happy about, the candidacy of Prince Leopold of Hohenzollern. So they didn't want Prince Leopold to become king in Spain. So in order to, avert this supposed encirclement, Emperor Napoleon III of France, at that point in time, we discussed this in our first module, Emperor Napoleon III of France now sent a message, okay, to King William, okay, the first of Prussia, demanding that the candidacy of Prince Leopold be withdrawn by Prussia. What he was saying essentially was that, please, in order for there to be peace, we want you to withdraw the candidacy of Leopold so that Leopold will no longer contest for the throne of Spain. Well, Prince Otto von Bismarck, who was the chancellor, of Prussia at this point in time, saw an opportunity, a diplomatic opportunity at this point in time to instigate war between France and Prussia. So what happened? The king was on holiday, so Emperor Napoleon sent a message. First of all, the first message he sent to the king, that is Kaiser William I. He sent a message and required, politely, that the candidacy of Prince Leopold of Hohenzollern be withdrawn, and the king agreed. Okay, the king agreed. King William I agreed and said, okay, well, in order for us to have peace, in order for there to, for no problem to come up, we agree that, Prince Leopold should withdraw his candidacy. Now, Leopold went ahead and withdrew his candidacy, but Napoleon was not satisfied. He wasn't satisfied with the state of affairs because he knew that there was still further possibility for Leopold or any other person within the German Zollverein, the Confederacy of German States, to later apply for, the throne of Spain. So he now sent another message to the king, Kaiser William, the first of Prussia, requesting that the candidacy, any other candidacy of a Prussian prince should be cancelled. In fact, no other prince within the Germanic states should even come up again in order to contest for the throne of Spain. Now, this was uncalled for because it was a very strong demand, it was a difficult demand. But what happened was that the king did send back a message, okay, politely, declining the request of Napoleon III. Now, Bismarck, who was an opportunist, very, very intelligent, brilliant diplomat, saw an opportunity to instigate war between Prussia and France. So what did Bismarck do? Bismarck got hold of the telegram and he did one or two things to it, okay, which was later known as the Elms Affair. And what did Bismarck do? Number one, Bismarck edited the king's report and released it to the papers. And he changed what was actually, just slightly changed, a couple of things in that telegram, okay, that was sent to Napoleon, and to make it seem as if, the king was insulting, uh, Napoleon. Now, this was unacceptable. He made it appear as if the king had insulted the ambassador Benedetti, who was sent, by the French emperor to Kaiser William I. So, number three, it led to anger in France. The French people were taken aback, they were annoyed, it was an insult. A small city state or principality like Prussia should not insult the French Empire. Now this resulted into the French declaring war. Okay, but most importantly, the key thing that we must understand here was that by using the Elms Affair, using this telegram, Bismarck knew, okay, that if he provoked war, if he insulted not just the ambassador, he was by extension insulting, Napoleon, and definitely it will result into war. Now, when this happened, Bismarck was able to create the impression that France and Napoleon would again unification of Germany at all costs. So remember, through the Danish War, and his attempt to protect Holstein and Schleswig, Bismarck had been able to gain the support, okay, of all the northern, Germanic states. He had gained the support of northern Germanic states, and by the time Napoleon declared war on Prussia, he was able to have the backing, okay, of so many other Germanic states. Although the Germanic states in the south, many of the Germanic states in the south were not still in full support of Bismarck and the Prussian army, but it was now clear that any kind of war between the Northern Germanic Confederation would affect the Southern Germanic states. And it was easy for Bismarck to create this impression because previously he had alluded to the fact that if France supported, that's what we studied in our first module, if France supported him against Austria by staying out of the conflict between Prussia and Austria, then he would probably grant France some concessions in southern Germany, in some of the southern city-states. And this was able to give Napoleon the impression that he would take some of this territory. Now, once war broke out between Prussia and France, then Bismarck was able to create diplomatic relations with the southern Germanic states by giving an impression that France had every intention of grabbing territory in the southern Germanic states. So before you know what is happening, the southern Germanic states, started rallying to the call of Prussia, and the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 took off. The war was fought, and within a very short period of time, Prussia was able to defeat France, and once Prussia defeated France, it was quite an embarrassing defeat, actually. It was quite an embarrassing defeat, and Paris fell eventually, and the Germanic armies, that is the confederation of all the Germanic states that came together to fight with Prussia against France, were able to march into Paris, and the French crown, Napoleon Bonaparte III, had no choice but to surrender. Now, it is very important to observe what took place at the French, the the surrender by the French at the end of the war in 1871. Now, this is very instructive because initially, if we remember what we studied in our first module, I remember telling us that Bismarck made sure that when Austria was defeated in the Austro-Prussian War of 1866, Austria was not disgraced in that at the end of that war. There was concession by Austria, there was surrender, and everything was settled quite amicably. But in the instance of France, it was different. And this was one of the, should we say, strategic errors that eventually came out from the unification of Germany, because historians normally look at this down the line as being one of the key causes of the First World War. Now, when the French were defeated, Emperor William I, after invading Paris and conquering, after the fall of Paris and conquering Paris and reaching the point in which the French emperor would surrender, they insisted that the surrender of the French would take place in Versailles, in the French emperor's palace called, the Palace of Mirrors, the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. Now, this was an insult to the entire French nation, because the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles was the seat of the French royalty, the seat of the French, royal tradition. It was complete embarrassment, in the sense that not only the surrender was carried out in the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles, the crowning of the Prussian Kaiser, the Prussian king, as the first German emperor as the German, the Kaiser of the German Reichstag, as the king of the German Empire, took place in that same Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. And this embarrassment was completely, it was just too much for the French people to bear. Now, this was the inauguration of the German Reich, the German Empire in the Hall of Mirrors. Now, they could have done this of course, they could have done this in Prussia, but they chose to do it in France in order to rub in the defeat of the French into their noses. Now, this insult, became, so profound that it continued, to create enmity between the French and the Germans for years to come. But nevertheless, at the surrender, and the inauguration of the German Reich, the entire German, confederation came together as one, thereby creating Germany for the first time. So Germany was now unified at the end of this war, when France, surrendered in 1871.